gold in the trends. Turn off the fake news, let the real news begin. We're dropping truth bombs, no Keynesian. If you seek real knowledge and keep listening. Phil is the host, got an MBA, hardworking CPA. Economics, the Austrian way. Joe Crick gives assistance. Revolution is now, we are the resistance. Follow the show, tell everyone you know, your friends and your family. KF's where to go to get real news and truth that's substantial. Sit back and relax, it's Kennedy Financial.
All right, we're live, episode 147 of Kennedy Financial. What is today's date? May 10th, 8 o'clock Eastern Standard Time on the East Coast. Our guest tonight is Stephen Clyde of the Peace and Liberty podcast. You can check him out there. He and I are also friends on Facebook. He's from Northern Virginia, just like myself, so we're going to get into that. We're going to get into lots of stuff. I got to hit pause here so I don't mess that up. But Stephen Clyde, thank you so much for coming on episode 147 of Kennedy Financial.
Hey, thanks for having me, Phil.
So you and I, just like several other people that we've had on the show before, met through, I imagine, Tom Woods. Tom has single-handedly brought more of us together than probably any other figure in the Liberty movement. So we got to thank him for that. But, kind of take us back to how you got started. I was reading about you on your website. You're 25 years old, studying economics and things like that. But I imagine this has been a walk for you. Most of us don't come out of the womb libertarian or understanding Austrian economics. So kind of take us back to your journey to understanding sound money, Austrian economics, things like that.
Sure. And I'll just start by saying right now is a really relaxing moment for me because I just finished college today, my college semester. I'm not done with college, but my college semester is done today. It's been a big weight on my shoulder, so I can finally get back to my podcast. But yeah, thanks for asking. By the way, just for people who don't know me, I'm Stephen Clyde. I host the Peace and Liberty podcast. You can check me out at peaceandliberty.com. I'm on YouTube. I'm on iTunes, Stitcher, pretty much everywhere now. How did I become a libertarian? I remember I must have been about 5 years old, my dad asked me, how would you like it if you had to fill out paperwork to go to the store? If you had to fill out paperwork to go to the mall or go to the beach? And I was just like, I would not like to do that. I would not like to be chained down in that type of way. And it's one of those things where you kind of realize libertarianism can be understood by 5-year-olds. It really can't. I didn't realize I was a libertarian yet. That was 5 years old. I think, going into high school, it's natural to rebel against your parents. So my parents are neoconservative Republicans, and I thought war was really good, but I thought government was bad. But I had no idea that the military was this wing of government that I should be against. I thought the military was like, this imperative part of the government that we need. So, or at least the public military, the government military as it is. So going into college, I was undoubtedly I was going to become a socialist. There was no doubt. The teachers I had were very socialist. I eventually took an economics class, and that turned my whole life around. I remember this girl that sat in front of me, she asked the teacher, why can't we just print more money? and the teacher kind of laughed at her. It was just like, well, money has value because it's scarce. And I was just like, scarce? What does that word even mean? Like, dumb kids don't even know what scarcity is. You got to think about it from that perspective. But I took that one lesson, and I think I found that about Ron Paul around the same time. So I turned on the TV and see Ron Paul in the debates. So I had the typical Ron Paul, found him, and then I got interested in economics. And then, yeah, like you said, Tom Woods is really, he took me all the way. People like him and Walter Block and the Mises Institute, they're the ones who took me all the way ideologically. But Ron Paul is really the start. I definitely say Ron Paul got me into libertarianism. But yeah, Tom Woods, man. Were you at the 1000th episode of that?
No, I wish I could have made it. Unfortunately, I was scheduled to be there. In fact, my brother John was going to come down too, but then the hurricane came through and really wrecked our plans. But as Tom said, he still had over 500 people show up to that event. Despite,
I think it was over 600, or it was like 600-700. It was a lot.
Yeah,
it was a lot. Yeah, it was the best time ever.
Yeah, I wish I could have been there, and I want to go on the Contra Cruise someday. And there's a bunch of events that I want to attend, Mises University and everything like that. But the fact of the matter is, once you become a husband and father and you have a day job, you get nailed down a little harder than you do in your earlier years. So take advantage of the free time.
Oh yeah, exactly.
So you've decided to do a podcast. Tom even says if you've done more than 8 podcasts, congratulations. That means you're already in the minority of people who decided to start one. So I know that you're already cruising toward 50. So congratulations on that. And now you're graduating from college. So you got a lot to be proud of. What can people expect to hear on a Life and Liberty podcast?
The Peace and Liberty podcast?
Yeah, sorry.
No, you're good. You're good. Well, basically what I have in store for the future is I just want to educate people, and I kind of aim to do a little bit shorter shows. Sometimes I put up 5-minute clips and I'm happy with that. I like having the power to be able to do that. Sometimes I put up hour episodes. But in general, I just want to make people realize that libertarianism is such a sound ideology. It starts from a very, very sound foundation, and you deduce a lot of other things from it. And that's what Mises understood and what Rothbard understood, that whether it's free market economics, all economics is deduced philosophically. It's not deduced from math. So that's the big divide between Austrian economics and like say Chicago School or Keynesian economics. So that's one thing.
How did you fare, now that you're completing your studies and you're going to get a degree to hang on the wall? That's the only reason I have mine here, is because otherwise the wall would be bare. So they're just decoration. They don't really prove to the world anything. People don't really know your value until you're in the workplace and actually doing something. But when you were going through your coursework, and I imagine you were being taught some Keynesian principles, and maybe you had fellow students who were like, oh yeah, this is the way and this works, how did you reach out to those people? How did you connect with them and say, hey, maybe there's a better path here? This Keynesian endless money printing fiat QE system isn't really all it's cracked up to be.
Usually I just give them examples. I mean, you can just talk about like the failed Bretton Woods system and how, the people who were calling us gold bugs were saying like gold could never go over $35 an ounce. And guess what? Gold never went below $35 an ounce. In fact, it went up to, what was it, 1,000 or 2,000? I was just reading this book the other day. I suggest this book. It's called The Case for 100% Gold Dollar. I don't know if you've ever read that, Philip, but it's really, really good. And I can find some notes in here. But yeah, it's just I believe in free market money. And the weird thing about crypto, which we'll get into, it's money's supposed to come from a commodity good. That's what Rothbard would argue. That's what Mises would argue. So Bitcoin, I wonder what Rothbard would have thought of Bitcoin. It's really hard to say, right? I mean, I think he would have found it interesting. I think he would have at least appreciated the idea that, wow, now we have something that can finally break the system, because it will break the system if people put their money into crypto. That's where the money's flowing.
I think really, and we're going to get into crypto more and more as we talk here, but I think the real poignant part about cryptocurrency, and especially Bitcoin, is it really shows the world just how bad the fiat system is. If you have any opposition to cryptocurrency because you think, hey, we don't know who Satoshi Nakamoto was, and by the way, it's not really anonymous, and there's a million different things you can come up with to disparage cryptocurrency, especially as it pertains to ICOs and all the scams and frauds that are out there. But I think what it really reveals is just how bad this central banking fiat system really is. If cryptocurrency has a chance at all, I think that's reflective of just how poorly central bankers have done in managing the money supply.
Yeah, that's a one-word answer. Yeah, I mean, everything's completely screwed up right now. I think a lot of people are starting to wake up to it. I think a lot more people are interested in economics now than 10, 15, 20 years ago. And part of it's because of people like Ron Paul, just getting them interested in like, what the hell did he just say? Like, I got to go research that. And from there, it's just, or once you read Murray Rothbard, you're done. Once you read Murray Rothbard, he leaves you with no arguments left in favor of the state. But like I said, I wonder what they would think about cryptocurrency, the great figures of the past. I don't know if you've ever read Bob Murphy's book. I forget who he co-authored it with. I think it's understandingbitcoin.us is the site. And he points out that, in his belief, Bob Murphy, that cryptocurrency is currency, but it's not money. And his reason for that is it's currency because obviously we can look around us and see that it's used millions of times a day, probably billions, who knows. But at the same time, it's not exactly a money because it's not widely accepted yet. Like, I can't take it into like a Target and accept it yet. Just like it's not universally accepted. So what are your thoughts on that?
Well, the same is true for gold and silver, right? I mean, none of us can shave off a corner of a kilo bar and carry it into Target and expect to pay with it. But it is a form of wealth, right? You can, over time, accumulate wealth in precious metals. And I think we're starting to learn that this thing called Bitcoin and cryptocurrency is the same way. I mean, it definitely has a lot more to prove. It's only been around since Satoshi's white paper came out in late 2008, and then they started mining in 2009. So no one's going to go out on a limb and say, except they're, maximalists like Andy Hoffman, who came on my show and said, yeah, there's no need for gold now when you have Bitcoin. But I had Keith F. Smith on my show, and he said, look, they don't have to be mutually exclusive. They can be complementary. So I try to stick with the notion that you've got gold, which is money, and cryptocurrency like Bitcoin, which is currency, and it's a much better currency than the green stuff in your wallet. And I think over time, there is going to be a transfer of wealth to both of these things. And those who have the foresight to accumulate both will eventually get to spend them, like James Turk said, one day down the road, because Gresham's law is the law for a reason. Good money chases out, or bad money chases out good. We're going to hoard the good until the day we need to spend it. And I don't think it's going to be that far off. I think, maybe a decade or so. I mean, you look at just all of the turmoil in the world. I mean, look what's going on just in Argentina alone. Forget the Middle East and other places. So this is a worldwide phenomenon. And we went through the Mt. Gox issues. I think I had Trace Mayer on my show, and I was bringing that up as a point in that I think that his Mayer multiple is even thrown off a little bit by the fact that, we had one exchange back then, and everyone was trying to figure out the market based on that one exchange. But now there's dozens or hundreds, and many of them are very reputable. And I think that's going to make Bitcoin especially unstoppable. So we'll have to see. But here's the book you brought up, The Case for a 100% Gold Dollar. You can get that, looks like, for $2.99. That's a bargain there on Amazon. And I'll bring it up. If folks heard the little popping noise here on my Coinigy account, Bitcoin falling below 9,000, Stephen. So does that concern you at all? I mean, just the amount of volatility. I mean, if most people are not prepared to experience a week like this, starting off at, what the heck was that? Oh, this has got to be the monthly chart. So just on this monthly chart alone, starting off at 6,800, rallying all the way almost up to 10,000, and now falling back below 9. What do you think about all that?
Where's the money going, right?
Yeah.
Is it just going back in the tether, or are people just waiting to get back in? I feel bad for my friend. He just bought like $4,000 worth a few days ago. He bought it at a hike, so he probably bought it at like 10 too. Poor guy. I know he won't sell. He's a smart guy, but yeah, I mean, he went into it really confidently. He's just like, man, I've been waiting to get into Bitcoin for a while again, because he's been in and out for a long time. And you get back in and you're way down. So you got to really know what you're doing. Obviously, hold, never sell at a loss. But yeah, I mean, I think honestly for me, I got a little bit out of cryptocurrency back when that happened in November and December. Not that I really lost anything, but everyone around me lost everything, and the hype just went away for a while. There was all that stuff about China banning miners, and honestly, Philip, I've been in college the past like 5 months. I haven't been trading too much crypto. I still understand it, and I love to talk about it, but I don't really know what happened with all that. Did they fix that problem? I kind of figured just billions of people in China, how are they going to stop people from mining? It doesn't even make sense. Maybe you can update me with that.
Gosh, it's really difficult when it comes to all the FUD out there to keep track of it all. You can go back and look at the charts and see the dips, and certain people keep track of this, like, oh, right here, this is where Jamie Dimon called it a scam or called it a fraud. And over time, these headlines just get erased from memory. I just did my crypto corner a couple hours before this, and we had Warren Buffett and Charlie Munger saying some pretty disparaging things about Bitcoin. And that's going to end up on the ash heap of Bitcoin history too. No one's going to look back and ever think, oh, that really mattered what, those two old farts said.
Right.
It's going to be completely irrelevant. I mean, this thing is happening. It's obvious that it's got legs. It's kind of like Krugman pretending like the internet was going to be as impactful as the fax machine. We can all ridicule him in hindsight. And I think it's obvious that this is going to continue to make parabolic moves. And I think the Winklevoss twins are right. I think $5 trillion in several years is definitely a $5 trillion crypto market cap is definitely within the bounds of reason. I mean, do you agree? What do you think about that?
Yes, I completely agree. And it's kind of funny, just to diverge a little bit. It's funny how Milton Friedman or the Friedmanites, they were actually more hateful of free market money than the Keynesians. I mean, at least the Keynesians wanted to have some, Rothbard called it kind of like a fig leaf comparison to, fiat dollars. Milton Friedman and the Friedmanites just wanted all fiat dollars. They just wanted to get rid of, the gold standard completely. They're very big opponents of the gold standard. So, and this just relates back to free market money. Why are people like Krugman denouncing Bitcoin? Well, it gets in the way of their big plan. They want to rule the world. It's essentially, you saw how hard Krugman was trying to get on Hillary's campaign. He wanted to work for Hillary. He was writing his articles, basically to Hillary, kind of like love letters. And Tom Woods and Bob Murphy pointed that out a lot. But I think people want to be free, Philip. I think deep down, most people want to be free, and they realize that the world, it always feels like the world's about to collapse, right? The media always makes it feel like that. We're about to go to World War III. Just anything's about to happen and the world's going to fall apart. And it's always felt like that. It's mostly the media, though. I think there's a lot that can be done. And yeah.
Yeah. So unpack this for me. Let me ask you a question.
Sure.
In terms of shows like ours that they crisscross, right? I mean, yours is the Peace and Liberty podcast. Mine's Kennedy Financial. I feel like we end up talking about the welfare and warfare state all too often on this show. And you venture into cryptocurrency. And based on the titles of our podcast, one would not assume that those would be areas that we'd be talking about. So from your standpoint, why is it that when you're talking about peace and prosperity, there's a tendency to get into economic matters, gold, Bitcoin, the Federal Reserve, things like that?
I mean, I could answer it like very, very simply, but I think it deserves a much more clear answer. I think people, when they're free, where does money come from? Money comes from the fact that we want to voluntarily cooperate with one another and trade. So obviously before money, there was the coincidence of two wants. You had to have the butter I want, and I had to have the milk you want. And we both needed to want to exchange it at the same time. It was the coincidence of two wants. So money plays a very, very important role in a voluntary society. And that's why people like Prudhoe and Kropotkin and Bakunin, they didn't get that. They wanted to abolish money completely. But, look what happened in 1930s Spain when they tried to establish their left anarchy there. I mean, they tried to ban money, and I think they decreed, the death penalty for money use. So that's the extent they would take to get rid of money. So I think money and freedom go hand in hand because we're human beings. We all need each other in some way. Not trying to sound like leftist about it. Like, we need each other in the sense that I have my own set of skills, and I would like to voluntarily cooperate with as many people as I possibly can, because the more people I cooperate with, the better my life is, right? The more people I can have connections with, the more people that I can hit up when I need a fact or a footnote or something. You need those people in your life. But it's voluntary. We all, you didn't force me to come on your podcast. I was like, hey, Philip, could I come on your podcast? And you're like, yeah, let's do it. Time and date. And I'm like, yes, I consent. I agree. That's how it works. There's nothing coercive about it. So that's how I live my life. And I think that's the relationship between freedom and free market money.
Yeah, that's a great answer. I think all too often the best way to address a lot of the arguments from the left are by bringing up examples just like that pertain to their real life. I mean, no one would think that I could just barge into your house and lay down on your couch and that's going to be okay. I had a buddy who did that once after a drunken night in Baltimore, and he woke up to the smell of bacon and eggs and walked into the kitchen. It turns out he'd fallen asleep in the wrong Baltimore row house, and imagine the surprise on the faces of the people who actually lived there, right? Because
Yeah.
that's not normal. But somehow when you apply that to government, that, hey, it's okay that you're going to pay for this thing that you are completely morally opposed to. I don't, even the worst leftists, you can eventually, if they're open-minded enough, you can eventually bring them around to understanding that. But, there is a difference between you and I, Steve. And as I mentioned, you state point blank on your webpage that you're 25. I'm approaching 40. So there's a small delta between our ages and some of the folks we deal with. So what do you feel like might be the biggest difference between, say, those 15 years in our friends and our, fellow colleagues? What's the difference in the mindset? How do you think that's going to play out in the years ahead?
That's a really, really interesting question. I think about the fact that I didn't have a cell phone until I was like in 8th grade, but in general, I had a cell phone and technology in my hand most of my life. You look at 3, 4, 5-year-olds nowadays, they have iPads in their hands. Like the parents just put the iPads in their hands. When you were growing up, Philip, I imagine you had a little bit less. Not that you didn't have enough, like, record. I still have a record player. I'm sure you had one of those, but you had a little bit less in that things that hadn't evolved yet technologically. We're able to talk about cryptocurrency now because some guy thought like, well, I guess I could diverge for a second. Like the Genesis block, he printed that. He was talking about the bank bailouts in the UK. So that's what he was talking about in the Genesis block, Satoshi Nakamoto. So yeah, I forgot my original point now. Lost my train of thought, but yeah.
That's all right. I'm going to try to bring up my original iPad.
Yes, you're talking about technology. Yes.
Yeah. Let me pull it up here because folks are going to get a kick out of it. I remember getting this when I was like 4 or 5 years old, and this really changed the life of a young 4 or 5-year-old Phil Kennedy, to the point where my mom kept it and we still have it. And she gave it to my kids, and this thing did not last 30 minutes. This was the greatest toy I ever received in my childhood. And it only came with like 4 records, but then like the following Christmas, they got me 4 more for different songs, like, Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star and things like that.
Are they like built-in songs to each little disc?
Yeah. And it looks like you could probably still get them on some of these antique toy sites or whatever. But yeah, that's what I have. That's what I had to keep me entertained. And my dad was a little bit ahead of the curve. We did have a VHS or VCR. So we were unchained by that. But yeah, I mean, I'll admit it. I mean, I've got a 3-year-old and a 6-year-old son, and there is a tendency to allow them to use these devices because they're thoroughly entertained. But then you wonder, like, what are going to be the long-term consequences of this? So it's a balance. And
I think there are long-term consequences. And I think fortunately for me, I turned most of my media attention to like reading and like educating myself, but you can easily turn that into only video games or only anime, which those things are great. But if you're not educating yourself, like, that's kind of exactly what the government wants. Kind of just wants you to like get in line, not educate yourself. And then you'll never be able to speak out against them. And in fact, you'll be probably more prone to justify the things they do. Because if you're less likely to help yourself, well, you're going to need help.
Right. Yeah, I went to a Catholic school growing up, and I didn't realize, people say, hey, I think in the libertarian community, we have a tendency for more critical thought. And I never really appreciated that as much until I became an adult. And I would have conversations with friends of mine who I grew up with, who went to a public school, and maybe their family did not raise them to think outside the box. And you begin to appreciate the fact that those of us who really investigate things and look past just whatever the mainstream media is feeding you, that's not a normal trait. But in the meantime, we're taking questions. If anybody wants their question asked, just go ahead and type it in on the right side of the screen there, and maybe we'll take calls. I don't know, Stephen, we've had some issues there before. People like to call in and, sometimes ask questions that I wouldn't really want my mother to hear. So,
man, if you're down to edit it out if you can, I'm down. That sounds fun regardless, man.
Yeah, sure. So anyways, while we're going along here, as we mentioned at the top of the show, you grew up in Fairfax, Virginia. I live here in Prince William County, and those folks may not know are two of the wealthier counties, if not the wealthiest counties in the U.S.
And I didn't realize it growing up. I had to move like out of that area to realize how nice of a place it was, how wealthy it is. It's still very expensive over there, but it went downhill since I was a kid. I grew up, I don't know if you're familiar with, are you familiar with Fairfax?
Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, I grew up in Frederick, Maryland, and now I live in Prince William, and I have to commute all over the greater DC area during my day job. So yeah, I've seen the immense wealth and prosperity that seems to accumulate just outside of Washington, DC.
Right. Well, I'm sure you realize, like, I asked you, like, what time zone you were. You said DC. People kind of from, like, you know, the Northern Maryland, you know, or Northern Virginia, Southern Maryland area, they usually say, like, they're from DC. Like, when I lived in, like, I went to Frederick. I lived in Frederick from age 12 to 18. And that's, you know, a small world. But, yeah, that's...
Oh, I didn't know that. So
yeah.
What were you doing up there? Where'd you go to school?
I went to Urbana High School.
Oh, wow. How about that?
Do you know that high school?
Yeah, what a small world. So that Urbana hardly existed, and this is making for, you know, a great podcast for those who are not from the greater DC area, but just, you know, so we can fill them in, Stephen. You know, these are all bedroom communities. People either work for the government or they service, you know, families who happen to work for the government. So basically everybody within, I'd say, a 75-mile radius of DC is a federal employee, because that's the only real booming business around this area. But Urbana was kind of like farmland back then, and it's grown immensely.
It still is. They got a McDonald's there. They got a Starbucks there. They got a few more roads. Yeah. It's still farmland there. It was one thing about that school is like 97% white. So it was just a weird environment, because I went to school in Montgomery County before that. I went to Clarksburg High School for a few years. Very, very diverse school. So I went from very, very diverse to a very, very, very white school. And it was just a weird, you know, one thing you realize, just because you live in a nice, rich area doesn't mean kids are good. Kids are worse. Kids are worse. The drug use was very rampant. Kids are pretty bad. You got to imagine they're bored on farmland. Might as well do some drugs. Well, what else? Are you going to play ultimate frisbee? Get some drugs and do ultimate frisbee. Everyone did that. Yeah.
Well, that was probably, you know, at the forefront of the opioid crisis that the president's trying to battle. You know, honestly, you know, I was in high school during the late 90s, and it did not appear to be as rampant. I think the worst thing I ever saw was marijuana and the occasional coke, but that was rare. It was, you know, mostly grunge rock and weed, right? And it's a far cry from a lot of these drugs that...
Oh, you wouldn't believe what we had access to when we were kids, Philip. I mean, we had access to everything. I didn't do everything. I knew friends who were, you know, had kids at like 16 and like were addicted to Xanax, addicted to Oxycontin. I'll tell you one story. It's just kind of random, but I remember this one kid. I used to smoke weed back in the day. I still smoke a little bit now, but, you know, back in the day when we were kids, we didn't have much else to do. I didn't play sports. You either played sports or smoked or do drugs. That's what I was trying to say. So I remember he came into my house and like he crushed up like this Oxycontin. He's like, "Hey man, can I snort it?" And I don't know if you've ever like, you know what like pills look like, but like a 40 milligram line of a pill, it's a really, really, really big thing to snort. And he snorted it all in one line. And ever since then, snorting something sounds terrible. It's just disgusting. But
have you kept in touch with him? How's he doing? Is he was he valedictorian at Harvard or what?
No. The point I'm trying to get across is that we all lived in like nice houses. My parents did decent. You know, my dad was an engineer. Like we lived, you know, middle class, upper middle class. But everyone else, this kid I'm talking about, his parents like overdosed on heroin. He lived with his aunt who lived in like a nice house in this nice area. But he's just a broken soul. So that's one thing you start to realize is, I don't know, looking back to like Montgomery County, I didn't know as many people that did drugs because they came from really hard times, you know, especially like once you get more towards like Gaithersburg. I spent a lot of time at like Lake Forest Mall, and yeah, obviously it gets worse year after year after year. Kids don't really care. I mean,
state of Maryland in general, really south and east of Frederick County, they honestly might as well split up Maryland into Maryland and Western Maryland, because it's just has deteriorated in so many other parts of the state. You don't even have to talk about Baltimore. About the Lake Forest Mall, I don't think you'd want to spend too much time there nowadays.
I haven't been there in maybe 10 years, but the last time I was there, there were people crowded outside the front, like just to like get inside the door. It was crazy. Wow.
So let me ask you a question that you're going to get. You got to be prepared. I mean, you've got a podcast called Peace and Liberty in this, libertarian utopia that you hope to create one day, Stephen. How are you going to address the opioid and narcotic epidemic in this country?
Well, with the free market, you wouldn't have this, and for a very obvious reason. First of all, what do heroin addicts do? Maybe heroin sometimes. Maybe they're injecting dirt in their arm. Maybe they're injecting salt or whatever. They don't know what they're getting. But when you buy something from, like, say, like a 7-Eleven or a store, like, you know what you're getting. So the fentanyl and carfentanil crisis, it's crazy. You take a few little sand grains of that stuff and it'll kill you. But fentanyl, it's, they have patches of that in hospitals. They just patch you fentanyl and it's dosed properly. But without a free market, and this ultimately goes back to the government has a cartel, or the government endorses the cartel, the drug cartel. Even Milton Friedman admitted that. So the government props up the drug cartel because they keep drugs illegal. So a cartel just means there's a very, very high price. They essentially have a monopoly on the good, and there's no quality assurance. So people are shooting up into their arms whatever they can get. And heroin is a deadly drug. Opioids are deadly. But what people got to understand is the way heroin addicts work. If they hear about a batch that killed somebody, that's the batch they want to get. Just try to understand. Heroin addicts are essentially trying to overdose in their addiction. That's what heroin addiction is. You're trying to get as close as you can to like overdosing, but like try to get that feeling that you got that first hit. It's like, crack cocaine. You'll never ever get that first hit. I've never done crack. I hope you haven't either, but I assure you the first hit's going to be the best you'll ever get. And that's the point. So maybe we would have heroin addicts, but they would also be doing real heroin. It would just, people can try to imagine from there as a starting point. It'd be a tad bit different. We'd at least know how to treat people. They'd be doing what they know they're doing. People don't overdose on nicotine because, obviously the cigarettes are regulated, but no one takes a puff of a cigarette and overdoses because there's too much nicotine in it, right? So when you have a market for things, people tend to not want to do things that kill them. I think that's kind of the whole point with how I see it. Yeah,
you're reminding me that we need to bring Dr. Mark Thornton back on the show. He talks about these sorts of things all the time, and he's got a book coming out about the skyscraper curse coming out in June. So,
which has been kind of an inside joke for most people. Like, you talk about the skyscraper theory, like, what are you even talking about, dude? Like, just look up Mark Thornton's skyscraper theory. I'm so glad he's coming out with a book on that. That's wonderful.
Well, since we kind of teased it, why don't you fill the audience in? I mean, you're freshly off your studies. What's the skyscraper curse to you, and what does it mean? What does it portend?
I honestly forget the theory. I forget if it's that during depressions skyscrapers are built, or if it's during boom skyscrapers are built. That's kind of the thesis. Do you remember it more clearly?
I think it's as simple as the tallest building is usually finished right before the beginning of a depression.
Oh, that's it. Yes.
A recession.
Yeah, that's the thesis. Yes.
Yeah. So I don't know if it's working out necessarily as well this time because, gosh, when did that tower in Dubai get finished? Maybe that was right before the last financial crisis. Maybe one of the viewers can type us in. Speaking of viewers, friend of the show, Chris, has a question for you that I know you'll smash, Stephen. Chris writes, does he have any thought on what Jeff Dice refers to as individual secession? Of course, Jeff Dice was on the show about a month ago for Lunch Break Live, and he is president of the most important institute for economics in the world, the Mises Institute. What do you think about that, Stephen?
Individual secession, just like maybe you could explain the thought and I could comment on that.
So, well, what I think it means to me is it's kind of like what Roger Ver talks about in that, and Trace Mayer too, with cryptocurrency, you're really gaining monetary sovereignty. So I mean, you might be stuck in a place that has a big government, and that government does things that you don't necessarily believe in, but you are slowly but surely preserving your own liberty through individual secession. You're taking steps to exit from the system.
Have you ever seen that Family Guy episode where Peter, he like declares his own house like his own country? You ever seen that episode?
You know what? I probably did. I know this gets dangerous because a lot of people, who like to throw around the term domestic terrorists, and this is my sovereign nation over here, and this is my little parcel, and I'm a sovereign citizen, and things like that. But I never. I can't remember if I saw that one or not.
Like when I hear individual secession, that means like I'm sitting here right now. I'm my own government, mofo. Like I'm my own person. Like I don't recognize any government. Like that's what I would think individual secession is, and it wouldn't work if only I just did it. But if me, you, and I don't know how many people are in the U.S. Like 320 something million people did it at the same time. I think that could work. And just like politicians come up to us and want things from us, just like no, go find your own way.
Yeah. Well, I think, I know we keep bringing it back to Bitcoin, but really, I think that's one of the things that they didn't anticipate. I mean, the censorship-resistant nature of it is a trustless, decentralized ledger. It's immutable. And as long as you hold those private keys, you can pretty much go anywhere in the world with your wealth. And more people are figuring this out. There was some guy who bought like 10,000 Bitcoin during the dip recently.
Yeah.
And you got to believe that guy understands what this is all about. So,
look, I want to tell you something. So it's pretty much known that Satoshi Nakamoto, he mined at least like the first million Bitcoins. Everyone knows there's 21 million Bitcoins that'll ever be put out if it ever gets to that point. I imagine it's kind of like in calculus when you're solving an equation, like you never actually get to zero. It's just like always approaching zero. So I don't know if 21 million will actually ever be dispersed, but the point is that he mined the first million. I just read an article today, Philip, and I was talking about how this business called Xapo, Xapo, and you can look that up. It's a startup company. They amassed like $10 billion USD in Bitcoin. That's another 1.1 million Bitcoin. So you got to think just from who knows how much Satoshi actually mined at first. Like we just know he mined at least 1 million. He may have mined 500,000 more. You know what I'm saying? So there's at least like 2 million just off those two examples out of the 21 million that's locked away. And the crazy thing about that first million coins is we can look at it. Most of it's unspent. It's just sitting there, right? It's crazy.
And that's the beauty of Bitcoin and cryptocurrency. It is a decentralized ledger, an open ledger. People can look at it. People who are smarter than myself, Richard Hart is constantly putting out things like, hey, somebody just transferred, 5,000 Bitcoins from one wallet to another. And I don't know how these guys figure this stuff out.
But 5,000 is nothing. I did the math. It's like 1.1. We just talked about 1.1 million Bitcoins. But yeah, but what the point of that article was, they're like locking this away in vaults. So like you take that money out of circulation, the value should theoretically go up. So we'll see what happens. I mean, I think this dip might just be a scare. Let me look it up as you respond.
Sure. So I'll bring
up.
Oh
wow, we're at 8,975. Wow.
Yeah, it's it's a little scary, but I'm not throwing in the towel. As Trace Mayer said, if you can't handle our 50% losses, then how do you deserve our 1,000% gains? But here's an article that came in from December, about 3 days before Bitcoin went crazy back in 2017. Man who threw away a fortune in Bitcoin now looking to dig up a landfill. I guess this guy had thrown away a laptop, and he had been mining back, before anybody really knew about it. Let's see, what did it say? You see Howells got in on the ground floor of the crypto coin economy back in February 2009. Through his computational labors, he amassed around 7,500 Bitcoin before his girlfriend, fed up with the noise of block mining hardware, made him stop. And so that laptop ended up in a landfill, and at that time was worth about 80 million bucks. So even Trace Mayer says that of the ignoring the coins that you just talked about, probably another 2 million are permanently lost forever. So right now we're sitting around supposedly 17 million in existence, but there's probably really only 13 million or less that could be accounted for.
Yeah. So obviously it could go both ways. Like either someone has a lot and they could sell it all at once, or they could just hold it and lock it away and die and lose the private key and all that stuff. I mean, that does happen. Someone did a lecture at the Mises University last year. She was talking about how she was telling her students about Bitcoin, then it went up way high, and she forgot the password to her wallet. So There's plenty of lost coins. I wonder if there would be a viable service one day to like recover lost coins, but it would have to be a hack and it would have to be like underground. But I don't know, recover the lost coins.
You know,
I don't know if it's possible.
I had made a little mistake just before Christmas, and I was under some stress. And actually, I look back at the mistake, and my sister passed away 2 days later. We've talked about it on the show. I was going through some stuff, and also I just received my Nano Ledger S, and I was wanting to get Zcash off the exchange, and I did a little transaction at work. It went through, and this is the thing, right? You always want to do a small transaction, make sure you're doing it right, and then you do the much larger transaction just to see, okay, it took 10 minutes before, so I'm willing to send now 20 coins and make sure that it goes through. And I had a little bit of Irish whiskey at the time, and I was feeling, depressed, as a result of what my sister was going through, and I copied the wrong address that I took it off of the Ledger Nano S transaction history, and basically I sent these coins off into oblivion. I don't think anybody holds the private keys to that Zcash address, and it wasn't a ton, but I was comforted later to find out. I spoke to Trace Mayer, and he admitted, "Oh yeah, don't worry, all of us have lost Bitcoin. All of us have lost crypto." And,
I thought the happy ending was like, oh, the transaction got reversed.
No. Bittrex got back to me, and they were like, "Nope, this has been." The confirmations are there, and this is on the blockchain. And so, I'm comforted though, because, you hear McAfee and he's talking about, I lose $1,000 a night between, my mess up and transactions. And we had Tim Del Mastro on the podcast, the director of Bitcoin Beyond the Bubble and other great documentaries. And he said, look, this is part of it. This is why there should be a premium to cryptocurrency, because there is that risk. I mean, there's not only the market risk, but there's also the risk that you lose your private keys. I mean, it's very simple.
This is why I kind of agree with Bob Murphy that, Bitcoin, at least, it's definitely a currency, a money. Let me give you an example. There was this one situation where like I owed this guy some money. I owed him like $100, let's say. I didn't have cash on hand. I had to like go through like local Bitcoins and like sell it. Like took me like a few hours to do it. But point being, he needed some money, and I was just like, dude, I'll give you $200 worth of Bitcoin right now. It was just like, I don't know what that is. I'm never going to understand. I'm just like, you could download a wallet right now. It's the simplest thing ever. Just explain to them, like, download a simple wallet, or, find one on your computer, make one on your computer. It's very, very simple. And then you just have a wallet address, and I send you the money, and you have twice as much value as you once had, and just didn't get it at all. It was kind of like offended, like I even asked. Like some people, it's just like, give me my cash.
Yeah.
So that's kind of where a lot of people were at, and I think that's honestly more or less where the average person's at. I ask people about Bitcoin all the time. Most of them have no idea. Some of them are aware of like, oh yeah, I heard a lot of people lost a lot of money in it, but most people never got involved with it. I feel like I'm kind of one of the lone wolves out there, but I'm not. It's grown so much in the past year. I thought 2018 was going to be the year, but it's not looking like it so far. We'll see what happens. I thought this would be the year of implementation. I think a lot of things are happening with blockchain, and maybe we can just talk about blockchain, because blockchain's a whole entity itself. Like you can implement blockchain in a business, and you get rid of third parties. Like that's marvelous. Wouldn't you love to get rid of people you normally would have to pay? That's what I would think if I was integrating blockchain into my business.
Especially if one of them is Wells Fargo. And I think really, honestly, not to keep pointing out the fact that we have a little bit of an age disparity, Stephen, but I think your generation, your classmates, your friends are understanding that more intuitively. They see how their parents have been defrauded by the stock market and the housing market.
We're hooked to our cell phones. We're hooked to our technology devices, and Bitcoin works with that. You can be. Here's what I find fascinating about Bitcoin. Have you ever seen Breaking Bad?
Oh yeah, that was one of my favorite shows.
Do you remember when they're in the storage unit and he's like laying on the $80 million? You remember how much space that took? The $80 million?
Yeah, and it was probably $100 bills.
Yeah, you could have multiples of that on your phone and carry it around, and you're a billionaire and no one knows it. I think that there's something to that I'll never not find interesting. That's great. So another thing I'd like to talk about is just privacy coins, because I kind of got out, I liquidated a lot last November and December, and because I was just waiting for the right privacy coin. Then I got back into college starting in January, and I was just kind of glued. I was doing so many things at once, but I wonder where privacy coins are heading nowadays, because XMR was one of the ones I was really, really into. I forget what other privacy coins I was getting into. I just have to look it up real quick. But
Zcash.
Zcash, yeah, I mined a ton of Zcash back in the day. I probably sold it all for an embarrassingly low price.
Yeah, but at least you were smart enough to mine it.
Yeah. You can still mine it nowadays. I wonder if you can make much.
I don't know. It sounds like it's way more complicated now.
Oh, God,
I mean, the genie really is out of the bottle. People understand this, and sure, maybe if you want to take a flyer on some no-name altcoin that is worth like 2 Satoshis or whatever, maybe give it a shot. But for the most part, you really have to be a McAfee-like operation now. I mean, you got to be powered by some kind of dam. What is it? Hydropowered dam.
It's one of those sad things. Like, you want to introduce people into crypto, but you don't want to introduce them into trading because they don't know what they're doing. See, I first invested in crypto. I invested $50 in Ethereum. That's where I started. I immediately put that into an exchange because I saw what my friend was doing. I kind of got the intuition, like, okay, buy low, sell high. That's with anything in business. So I put it on an exchange. I turned that $50 into like $250. And that was a dopamine rush. I mean, you get a huge rush from that. It's like gambling. It's addicting. So I turned that 250 into like a few hundred more and just kept going from there. But people were either going to do that, and maybe I got lucky and just like, tripled my money right away, quadrupled my money right away. But some people might lose it right away. Like I said, my friend who's a veteran in Bitcoin, he's been in it like 2 years longer than I have. He's probably down like 10%.
Yeah.
Like he bought a little over 10K and now it's below 9K. So yeah.
Well, can you imagine what it would have been like? And Max Kaiser has spoken about this before. Like, if you bought Bitcoin at $30 and you watched it fall down to $2, can you imagine like going to tell your parents, yeah, I bought this thing. It was like magic beans. And someone told me like, it would be a beanstalk and I'd climb up and like I joke with my wife.
My dad told me. My dad's just like, this doesn't really make any sense. This doesn't sound like a good place to put your money. And I'm just like, yeah, like you just don't understand, Dad. And fortunate for me, like I'm an experienced day trader now. I can get on there and I can make pretty decent money. But you got to put a lot of time. If you've ever day traded, it takes a lot of your day. I stopped doing it. I got out of it because I would rather just buy and hold. Like, day trading is it can be treacherous some days because not every so some days you're in the red, you're bleeding hard, and you got to make moves fast. You got to like stay up all night. You got to like set your phone to like 3 a.m. because you're waiting. You just bought like an uneasy stock and you're waiting to see if it goes up or down. I've bought like $1,000 worth of a coin at 1 Satoshi and sold it at like 5 Satoshis. I've done that. That's possible. I do. If you see like a new coin on the market, just take a risk. You might get really, really lucky. A lot of people just got really, really lucky, right? But to become an experienced day trader, you just got to understand economics a little bit better. How maybe that's an easy way to put it.
Yeah, I don't really day trade. I kind of wait for the big moves. I've talked about Chris Dunn on this channel before. He puts out some of the best materials I've seen around. Here's his most recent one. Hopefully this doesn't cause my computer to crash. But
no worries, my iPad just died, so I'm looking at you at an angle. So no worries.
No problem. But he talks about, why is it big breakouts happen? This was from his most recent video. And you wonder, like, why is it that Bitcoin would suddenly run from 6,000 or 7,000 all the way up to almost $20,000 in the span of Thanksgiving to Christmas? And he explains all these reasons why. He's been trading for a long time, but he also says, day trading can be a little bit like trying to pick up peanuts from an elephant. So I don't personally do it. You referred to this video, Malavika Nair, the economics of Bitcoin. This was another video that I really found impressive, and I'll put here on the video. Oh, shoot.
Yeah. I'll also add, if there's any Mises nerds here, I got a scholarship to Mises University, so I will be there this year, but I'm such a nerd. Last summer, I watched like every single live Mises University episode. I'm a huge nerd, so I'll actually be there this year. That'll be great. So I'll be sitting where they are in that video.
Yeah, no, that was good. And I watched that video and I was tempted to send it to guys like Peter Schiff, like, hey, here you have someone at Mises University talking about the economics of Bitcoin. I think it's pretty clear it's not going away anytime soon. This thing is here to stay. There may be Bitcoin, may be the MySpace of cryptocurrency. Who knows? We'll find out.
Yeah, that
doesn't mean it's going to happen overnight.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean it's going to happen overnight. I mean, you can slowly but surely. I hold several coins. I have a whole portfolio: Bitcoin Cash, Dash, Litecoin, Zcash, EOS. I am 70% weighted Bitcoin now, though. At this point, I talk about that on the Crypto Corner as to why I think this next move will be one for the ages. I think these shorts are going to get crushed at some point. And
yeah, my friend bought it like over 10K because he thought the pump was about to happen. I'm sure he's like sitting, holding back, just waiting for it to happen. Maybe it will tonight. But yeah, I've been watching it drop the past 2 days. Been kind of a shame. But yeah, now's a good time to buy, I would say.
Yeah. Well, I mean, there's many different factors to look at, whether it's the Mayer multiple or the 70% pullback, constant wars, the government budget, the largest budget ever. This is all short-term noise that causes crypto to pull back, gold to pull back. So stay in this game for the long run. So we probably need to wind down here. What do you want to? What didn't I ask you? What didn't we talk about? What should we finish up with, Stephen?
Well, I briefly mentioned privacy coins. Did you mention any privacy coins you're interested in? Because maybe you've just been a little bit more in the loop. Because I'm gonna start getting back into cryptocurrency. I just had a hard semester in college, but I'm done now, and I'm just out of the loop. I feel bad.
Yeah, no, I am an armchair guy, right? I mean, while I was talking about the coin of the week earlier today, it was like Bytecoin or something, and one of my viewers had to chime in and be like, "Hey, that was a hard fork from Monero," and I don't even know this stuff, right? I just kind of look for smarter guys.
Bytecoin's at Bytecoin is at a penny now, man. Do I have some Bytecoin? Am I rich? It's up like 340% right now because sometimes I just look to see like, what's the highest gains in the past 24 hours. Bytecoin's up. Wow.
Yeah. I'll see if I can pull up the chart for our viewers. And for those who only listen on the podcast, obviously, we do this show as a video and you get the full effect by watching me kind of cruise around the internet and add footage to some of the things we talk about here on the show. Unfortunately, I'm having a problem here sorting on CoinMarketCap. Let's see here. Yeah, it's just amazing what some of these altcoins can do. I'm very leery of them, especially anything under $1 billion in market cap. But yeah, where is Bytecoin? I'm sorry, folks. I'm having trouble here. It's at number 16, 2.1 billion, now over a penny. So do you think you own any of that, Stephen?
I'm trying to log into my old Poloniex account to see. I know I have like 10,000, just like some random coin. Like maybe I hit the jackpot here, but if it's at a penny, imagine if it goes to $1. I'd like to have $10,000, man.
That's the beauty of being an early adopter like yourself. You've just got like change kicking around that might.
I have tons of old coins that'll probably never come back. I have a like 0.01 of Bitcoin in like inflation coin. And this coin just like absolutely never went anywhere, like never would go above 1. But if it went up one day, I would have a lot of money. All right, let me log into my Poloniex and see what I got here.
Yeah, I see that from time to time with guys on Twitter, and they're going on their old laptops and just searching around files and like, oh, here's 10 Monero I found. I'm like, well, that's better than a kick in the teeth or a poke in the eye, just stumbling on 10 Monero that you forgot you had.
No way. I have 77. I'm not going to say it on air. I logged into my old Poloniex account. I do have. I'm not going to say it on air. Damn it now. I'll tell you one thing, Philip. I'm a little bit scared for people that get into this. I knew one guy, and I obviously won't say his name. He started out with like $800. I want to say like July 2016. Within a year, he turned that into like 80,000. I don't know why he was telling anybody. Because I don't know about you. I believe taxation is theft. So I don't believe you should pay taxes on any of the cryptocurrency you trade. So it's your money. Like if you made gains on it, like I don't think you should pay anything on that. So I'm very, very scared of people who like openly, like, you know, I'll toss around some numbers of what I have, but like in general, I'm not going to tell people if I have like $30,000.
No.
Why would I don't understand people, or like 100,000 or a billion or whatever. I don't know why people do that. I feel like you become a target in a lot of ways. Mostly it's kind of like you become famous and like you have old relatives you never met come find you, but they never cared about you before. You start to have like friends take advantage of you. Like, hey man, like I'm really struggling. Can I get like 1 Bitcoin? You have 100. It's like, huh? I wouldn't want to expose any of that. I wouldn't want to leave any of it to tax, so to speak.
Yeah, no, that's a smart idea. And honestly, there probably are a lot of unknown crypto millionaires and to a lesser extent billionaires walking around out there.
Yes.
You know, I
was
never
watching
once
this video
heard
that-
Trace Mayer say how much he has, and I don't
Yeah.
expect him to, because you're just going to make yourself a target.
Yeah, I was watching this one kid. He had like 400 Bitcoins when Bitcoin was around like 10K many months ago. And he's like a millionaire, you know, good for him. But he's just like this young 13-year-old kid. How to get 100 Bitcoins? Well, he may have gotten it very, very easily if he's just a tech nerd and like, you know, knew about the strange movement that came on the scene. So
Yeah, his name was,
I think it's all amazing.
no, it is. It's definitely amazing. So as we mentioned at the top of the show, you do the Peace and Prosperity podcast.
Peace and Liberty podcast.
Oh my gosh.
I think Ron, you get confused with Ron Paul Prosperity.
I butchered it on purpose. I did.
No, you're totally fine.
I said life and liberty and peace and prosperity on purpose. So here it is. I put it on the YouTube link, and I'm going to put it in the description box so folks can find it over here on my side. But they should definitely check it out. And again, what are they going to find out over there?
Oh, I have a lot of presentations there that are just like educational pieces. If you're someone that's like new to libertarianism or someone that wants to just educate yourself, watch my videos. You're going to get that. But I want to move into different areas and do different things, talk to different people. I have a lot of guest interviews booked, so there's going to be a lot coming from me. You know, I find that there's very few people like me who like sit down and like read a bunch of books. I definitely encourage anyone to like, you know, whether it's like audiobooks or anything, just like try to educate yourself, like absorb information. And that's power, because no one can really crush you in arguments anymore. You feel more powerful in your daily life because you can go out and feel confident about what you know. And a lot of people feel confident about what they don't know. And that's like leftism in a nutshell, right? So
yeah, no, it definitely can be a double-edged sword. I'd rather know this stuff than be walking around ignorant.
yeah.
But on the other hand, you know, as Henry Ford once said, if the American public understood our financial system, there would be revolt by morning. So that's what we're doing peacefully here.
I think Murray Rothbard had a way with people because he just lived his life in cackling laughter. So I try to make people laugh. I try to make people see like, okay, you know, government's hilariously wrong in everything they do. They hilariously mess up everything to our detriment. So yeah, well, thanks so much for inviting me on, Philip. It's been a great talk.
Yeah, definitely. I've enjoyed it. Folks need to check us out next week. Unfortunately, we did not get Jay Taylor on the show this week, but I'm going to work to get him on next week, talk about mining stocks and gold. John, unfortunately, didn't make it tonight. He's a newlywed now. So, you know, he's busy doing other things, trying to be a good husband and things like that. But he should be on the show next week. We'll do the Crypto Corner, maybe a lunch break live, and I may even appear on Elijah Johnson's show. So I'll let everybody know about that if that happens to be the case. But also in the comments below, if there's another debate you want to hear, let me know, and I'll try to get them on. No guest is too big, so think about it and let me know. See ya.
Kennedy Financial. Kennedy Financial. Kennedy Financial. Kennedy Financial.
Hey everyone, please like, follow, donate, subscribe, and share. Any donations will be used to reach more people.